I think I could predict the number of hands that I would see raised if I asked you, have you ever experienced trauma before in your lifetime? I would actually be more interested in seeing the hands of those who have not. That is because trauma is such a universal experience. Now, when I speak of traumas, a couple of definitions may come to mind. There are traumas that happen to the body that can be both life-threatening or life-altering. Thankfully, we have emergency rooms and hospitals such as Ben Taub Trauma Care Center in Houston, Texas, that can treat these traumas to the body. But the trauma that I'm speaking of today is psychological. It's mental and it's emotional. Trauma is defined as a response to a deeply disturbing or distressing event that overwhelms the individual's ability to cope, diminishes their sense of self, and their ability to feel the full range of emotions and experiences. As you can see, trauma negatively impacts our lives, and we don't have the capacity to experience all of the emotions at one time. Trauma can distort our self-image, our reality, our values, and beliefs. Then I ran across another definition of trauma, and it's defined as an incident outside the range of normal human experiences that has the ability to easily sidetrack a person's usual ability to cope with stress. And I read that definition over and over again, and the words that continue to resonate with me are normal range and usual ability to cope with stress. So if trauma is considered outside the range of what is normal, well, what is considered inside the normal range? I would like to call these everyday life stressors. Stressors such as our jobs. Our jobs can be very stressful, right? Yes. That's because we're trying to meet project goals and deadlines. But if we plan ahead of time, we can at least minimize the amount of stress that we experience. Stressful, but still within that normal range. And then there's parenting. Any parents in the house? I know you're looking at me like, no, that is outside the normal range. No, that is actually inside the normal range, because we're trying to discipline our children and make sure that they become productive citizens of this world and contribute to society in both an influential and an impactful manner. But the truth is, our children don't always listen, and as parents, we're gonna make mistakes. Stressful, but still within that normal range. As you can see, we can't eliminate the stress from our lives. So if these are the everyday life stressors that are considered within the normal range, well, what is considered outside the normal range? I want to share this story of this young couple that I once knew. They had a strong love for one another and they had a strong faith. The wife was currently pursuing her master's, and the husband, he was pursuing his career as a stand-up comedian. And they had their whole lives ahead of them. About 1.5 years into marriage, they experienced a trauma. The husband, who loved to live his life so carefree, loved to ride motorcycles. Unfortunately, he had a motorcycle accident. Thankfully, he did survive the accident, but he was in ICU. So the wife had to take some time away from her job in the place where she also interned to go be by her husband's side. Well, about a week had passed, and there was no indication of any complications, and the wife thought, you know, I'll go back to my internship the next day. She asked her husband if he was okay with it, and he was very supportive and said, yes, sure, go back. So she went back to her internship the next day, and around lunchtime, she felt really compelled to read her Bible. And she ran across this scripture that was inspirational, that was comforting and encouraging, and she thought, oh my goodness, I cannot wait to share this scripture with my husband, because she had been encouraging him in the past week. Well, after a long day's work, the wife rushed to the hospital to go be by her husband's side. But to her dismay, when she arrived, her husband didn't look the same. As a matter of fact, he looked unrecognizable. His body had swelled up so much to where his eyes were slightly bulging out of his head, and he was hooked up to a ventilator. And the wife quickly inquired of the doctors and nurses and said, what happened to my husband? And the nurse told her, well, around lunchtime, he actually went into cardiac arrest. The wife could not believe it. And she couldn't believe that no one even thought to let her know of these traumatic and dramatic changes to her husband's body. So as she was sitting there trying to process what she was hearing, she started to hear shouts of cold blue and cold red. And if you're in the medical field, you know that's an immediate medical emergency. And the doctors and nurses began to rush to whose side? You probably guessed right. Her husband died. So now the wife not only had to process what she heard, now she had to process what she was seeing. And so she was quickly whisked away and was told to wait in the family consultation room, but she refused. So she waited in the hallways closer to the entryway, and she just began to pray and hope and believe that everything was going to go back to normal, just like it was in the past week. A few moments had passed, and the doctors burst through the double doors, and she walked briskly to the doctor and said emphatically, "How is my husband?" And the doctor couldn't even look her in the eye. And he said, "Oh, he didn't make it." She soon realized that the scriptures that she had read earlier, one of hope, encouragement, and comfort, was really not for her husband, but it was for her. And that young lady was me. And this happened to me 16 years ago. I was 24 years old, and I was married to Corey Bailey, and he was only 28 years old when he passed away. And I know I probably should have warned you that the story that I was getting ready to share was about me. But that's the thing about trauma. It comes with no warnings. It comes out of the blue, whether you're ready for it or not. And no matter how many psychology courses I took, nothing could have ever prepared me or prevented me from experiencing the psychological impacts of trauma. Distress, helplessness, hopelessness, diminished sense of self. Corey and I, we were a young couple. We had a relatively normal life. We were newlyweds. I was pursuing a career in mental health, and he was pursuing a career in entertainment. Stressful at times, but at least that stress was within that normal range and usual ability to cope with stress. Until that experience, then I was officially outside the range of normal human experiences, the ability to cope with that. And his death actually happened at Bentock Trauma Care Center in Houston, Texas. And though they made every attempt to treat the physical traumas to his body, they didn't have the capacity to treat the psychological traumas that I was experiencing in that moment. So I know you're probably wondering, well, how in the world was I even able to manage such a psychological trauma at a young age? Well, my faith was a great source of comfort for me. And because I was already in the mindset of a student, I had to understand how this trauma was impacting me. And then I was exposed to trauma-informed care. Trauma-informed care is an organizational structure or treatment framework that recognizes, understands, and responds to all types of traumas. Trauma-informed care is educational, it's therapeutic, and it has an application approach. So you're not just learning about trauma, you're learning how to apply what you've learned into your life. So in trauma-informed care, I learned more about PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And I learned that PTSD is not just confined to post-war combat veterans, and that I indeed was experiencing symptoms of PTSD, intrusive thoughts, avoidance, and even some fight or flight responses to some intense triggers that I had to manage. In addition to PTSD, I also learned more about ACEs. ACEs is Adverse Childhood Experiences, and if you don't know, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, she stood on a TED Talk stage and she talked about how this ACE study actually revolutionized her medical practice. Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris was treating these children that were having health issues. The problem was these health issues and conditions kept reoccurring, and she wanted to understand why. And she ran across this study that revealed that children who have been exposed to adversities, especially at high rates, can develop health conditions later on in life. And I realized in that moment that I not only had to process the loss of a husband, I also had to process some unresolved adversities in my life to at least minimize or even eradicate some health conditions that I can have in my now adult life and possibly in the future. So trauma-informed care was very, very beneficial for me. But my perspective or my perception of trauma didn't quite change until I ran across a common word that is used in our everyday vernacular, and that word is opportunity. Opportunity is defined as a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. And I read that definition over and over again. A set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. And then a light bulb went off. Where in that definition does it say that those circumstances have to be favorable? I don't know about you, but every time I thought of the word opportunity, I always equated it or correlated it to something favorable, something positive. True story, I even had this cartoon cutout of the word opportunity, and opportunity had legs and arms, and it was carrying a briefcase, and it was getting ready to knock on the door of some guy. He was standing on the other side of the door, and he had this huge grin on his face, and he was getting ready to reach for the knob. Now, based on his emotional response, I knew that opportunity was coming to knock on his door in the form of something favorable. Maybe it was a job promotion. Maybe it was a new business venture. Maybe it was something personal, like a relationship or perhaps a new baby. Well, here's what I come to know about traumas, losses, and grief. They're not perfect gentlemen. They're not gonna come waltzing up to your door very gingerly, knock, 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 hi, how are you doing? Want some coffee? Want some tea? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. Opportunity, traumas, losses, and grief, they're not gonna come knocking on your door. As a matter of fact, they're gonna come knocking the door down. And when they do, they're gonna bring in every single word of the definition of psychological trauma: distress, helplessness, hopelessness, diminished sense of self, throw in some depression, some anger, some sadness. But here's what I love about the word opportunity. It just doesn't stop at a set of circumstances. It says it makes it possible to do something. Okay, now, what am I supposed to do with this trauma, loss, or grief that I did not ask for? Well, according to research, individuals who have experienced trauma can develop some inner toughness, resiliency. Research also says for individuals who have experienced past traumas, if they experience future ones, it doesn't mean that these individuals won't be negatively impacted. It just means that these individuals would have developed some elasticity or the ability to recover quickly, some bounce back, again, resiliency. So I knew in that moment that though this trauma came into my life to break me, I was gonna use it as an opportunity to bend me, and I was gonna do something about it. I wish I could show you a picture of the 30+ women I've had the opportunity to share a trauma-informed program called a New Me Life Transformation Program. And the purpose of this program is to help transform traumas and losses into opportunities for 3 things: personal growth, healing, and purpose. Purpose meaning that they have to do something about it, or at least be presented with an opportunity to do something about the event that they had to face. Trauma-informed care and this ability to share the trauma-informed program has been a life-changing experience for me. It brought me purpose, and it gave me a passion to raise awareness to mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. In addition to this, I didn't think that I had the capacity to try at life and love again, but resiliency said differently. As you can see, I'm currently remarried to an awesome and amazing husband who I love so dearly, and his name is Brian Bruce, and we have 2 beautiful girls, and their names are Anais and Corey. So I have this amazing purpose that I can share with my supportive family. I'm so very blessed and grateful for that. So I'm not here today to try to thwart the years of research that has gone forth in addressing psychological trauma. If you don't know by now, I'm a huge advocate for it. It actually saved me. And trauma is very complicated and a huge undertaking for anyone who's willing to process it. And in life, we never can anticipate how we're going to respond to unfavorable circumstances. But if those circumstances are traumatic, we can guarantee that our responses are going to be outside of that normal range and usual ability to cope with stress. But as we're processing this trauma, what if we can hold on to one word, opportunity, as a hope that one day we could do something about the very distressing event that we had to face. Again, in life, the circumstances may not always be favorable, and sometimes we will have to experience those incidences outside of our normal range and usual ability to cope with stress. But we do, in fact, have endless possibilities to do something about it. I certainly did, and I believe that you can too. Here's your opportunity. Thank you.